Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Today I've got the Cyelee Bear closed emitter optic sitting on this Glock 41 chambered in 45 ACP. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis X and Core belts, linked to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links, it will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. And please consider supporting the channel on Player, formerly Utreon, where we can do some types of videos that are no longer allowed on YouTube. Cyelee approached us to do a review on a couple other optics. You may have already seen the review on the Wolf X Pro by now. And I mentioned in that video that I reject most of them because most of them I just don't seem to be where the quality is going to be high enough for me to give a good review. But when I kind of started looking into Cyelee a little bit, they actually appear to have very good quality. So I decided it was worth actually having them send one and doing a review on it. They actually have a manufacturer's website with details on it. So they're not just a storefront that can just disappear. The optics are constructed well. It's 7075 T6 aluminum for the construction. They've got glass optics. They've got waterproof characteristics. This one is IPX6. So a lot of the characteristics that I look for in quality or indication that the manufacturer really wants to make a quality product, they had. So go ahead, send them. Let's take a look at them. And I wasn't disappointed. The Wolf X Pro worked flawlessly. Same thing happened with this. I mounted it on the gun. The reticle was set to center from the factory. It was on paper from the factory. And very few of the optics, unless it's made for a specific gun, are going to come actually zeroed. But being on paper, it was easy to get it centered and zeroed fairly quickly. These are 1 MOA clicks, and they actually click. And the click is kind of important to me. When it clicks, number one, you can count the clicks. It's easy to see how many clicks in each direction you've gone. But the other thing is, ones that click, that have a detent, tend to stay zeroed more than ones that just spin. If it's just resistance on the screw, vibration can move it, whereas the clicks, it's a little harder for it to move itself. The battery is mounted here, which means you can change the battery without having to take the optic off the gun and blow your zero. It's a CR2032 battery, so they're real common. So you've got an adjustment here, an adjustment here. Because it's a closed emitter, you have glass at the back and glass at the front. And with the waterproof capabilities that it has, you're not going to get water, or dust, or sand, or anything else in there. The closed emitter ones tend to be a little bit larger. That's one of the natures of them, because you're basically creating a box so that you can put glass at the back end, where most of them would have the glass up here and then kind of a flatter part, and the emitter diode would be back here shooting up at the glass. To close the emitters in, you have to basically turn it into a box. The reticle on this is much nicer than it's going to show on the camera, because cameras hate red dots, but it's a 3 MOA dot, and the dot's blowing out because, again, the cameras hate red dots. But at the range, this dot was very easy to see, very clear. It has 8 adjustments for 8 brightness levels, 2 of which are night vision friendly. So you won't be able to see those with your eye, but a night vision goggle would pick them up. Night vision capability is not common on anything other than very high-end, fairly expensive optics. So it's kind of nice that they included that feature. The controls are easy to use. You can change the brightness up and down. I found the controls very responsive and easy to use, but just brushing against them and hitting into them won't activate them. You have to intentionally do it, but it's easy to do it when you intend to. The optic, the reticle was easy to see, and even at the highest brightnesses, of course, they get a little bit bigger when they get brighter, but it was still stayed clear and defined. It didn't blow out. Once I got it zeroed, it stayed zeroed. And the other nice thing about it is you pretty much set the brightness to what you want it to be and then forget about it. You don't have to turn this thing off. It'll turn itself off, and the instant you pick it up and move it in any way, it'll turn itself on. So that shake-awake feature that historically has only been on the higher end red dots, the more expensive red dots, is becoming more common in the mid-priced red dots, and the Bear and that Wolf X that I previously reviewed have that feature. This is kind of an interesting mounting pattern, but to show you that, I'm going to kind of go into the box for a second, because there's a few things in the box that are of interest. If I can get the box to come apart, I'm just going to pause. I'm going to get the box open and I'll be right back. Some of the things that are in the box I just want to show you. It comes with a cleaning cloth. A lot of them do now. Sticker, of course. But what it's interesting that it does come with is an assortment of screws, and they're labeled. Unfortunately, the pistol-mounted optics whole arena is horribly non-standardized. Every manufacturer has a different idea of how deep the screws should go, how the slide cut should be, what the footprint should be, how many screws, etc., etc. They also come with these plates. So this plate is meant to mount on the RMR footprint, and the one that's on there, of course, is the Glock MOS, because I mounted it on a Glock. One interesting thing, they were actually incorrectly labeled. Both of them said 4 RMR. So when I got it, initially opened it, I thought, oh great, I've got 2 RMRs, I'm missing the MOS one. But in reality, it was the right pattern, so it did include an RMR and an MOS, they were just mislabeled. But other than that, it worked well. But an example of that non-standardization, if you happen to follow us on Instagram, you'll see that we were going to put this optic on an FN 545. But FN's got this Rube Goldberg mess of plates and adapters and spacers and stuff you have to do, and you got to mix and match them just right. And by the time you put all those spacers and everything on it, the screws have to be 3 feet long. And I didn't have either in this optic or in my stash of screws the right screws. So it's impossible for any optic manufacturer to include every possible screw you might ever need, depending on what weird gun you're doing it with. But they at least give it a try. Most optics manufacturers just kind of phone it in. They put a couple screws in there, so they say they included screws, but they don't fit anything. Cyelee at least gives it a try, and they include probably what are the most common screws. To that point, after I fought with that FN and used a bunch of words that I don't normally use on the channel, I just said, okay, I'm give up on the FN, I'm going to drop it on the Glock. And when I decided to put it on the Glock, once I realized I actually did have an MOS plate, it went on there flawlessly. So they at least try, but it's kind of a difficult arena until we get a little bit more standardization to do that. But I like that they at least give it a go. So what you would do is you would put the plate of your choice on the gun, and then this plate would be, you'd remove this plate, and it's kind of spring loaded, and that would allow you to rock the optic off or put the optic onto the plate, and then you screw it down and it stays put. And it is rock solid. If I hold the slide, the optic doesn't move. Once I zeroed it, and again, it was on paper out of the box, it didn't take too many clicks to get it zeroed. Once I zeroed it, it stayed zeroed for the entire session and worked flawlessly for the entire session. It was easy to pull good groups with. And I put it on a 45 ACP, so it actually would get a decent ride on the slide to determine whether or not it was going to shake it loose or disrupt it. It also did not interfere with the cycling of the gun. It weighs 2.4 ounces, which, because it's a closed emitter, it's going to be heavier than the typical flat ones that tend to weigh like an ounce, ounce and a half. But even being the size it is with the closed emitter and more aluminum, 2.4 ounces isn't much, and the gun didn't even notice it being there. I found it really easy to see the reticle. I found it clear, easy to pick up, and zeroed in on the target and hit the target fairly easily. The body on this is 1.85 inches by 1.3 by 1.36. So it's kind of a rectangular-ish, and it's a bigger optic given the fact that it's a closed emitter, but it's not huge. And as I mentioned, it's not particularly heavy. And it doesn't really feel bulky. Using it, handling it, working with it, it was easy to work with, easy to use. I had no trouble using the controls. Overall, I liked the optic, and I liked the fact that it stayed zeroed. I've tried some optics out that you get them zeroed, and then after a mag or two, they're kind of off again. You got to tweak them, and it's a go back and forth kind of thing, especially the ones that don't click. This one, once I zeroed it, it just stayed zeroed, stayed working, and did what it was supposed to. And in case I failed to mention, it's a 3 MOA dot. It was big enough to see well, but not so big that it covered the target up and made it hard to find the bullseye. Overall, I didn't really find any difference in using the closed emitter versus the regular open emitter. It was just easy to pick up. It was just easy to find the dot. The optic itself was a little bit bigger in my view, but the window is actually a pretty good size window. So the target was not obscured by the body of the optic at all. I didn't really find any difference in between one and the other. The one thing I would say is that a closed emitter like this is probably going to be a little bit easier to keep functioning while in a hostile environment. Let's say you're out hunting or things like that where it gets rained in. Both of the styles tend to be waterproof, but it's easier to just kind of wipe that off as opposed to if water gets down on the diode, it may not ruin it, it may not get in there and damage the electronics, but it can sit there and act like a lens and mess up the dot. That's not going to happen on a closed emitter. So these are good for hostile environments, and the trade-off is a little bit bigger body. But overall, if you're saying, one or the other from an ease of use perspective, both were equally easy to use, and I really didn't find anything that I had to do to adapt to this particular style. The MSRP on this is $299. The current sale, they've got a sale on their site currently, that may change by the time you watch this video, for $215, and I was seeing it around $190 to $200 on Popular Optics websites. If you happen to buy it on Amazon, if this is one you're interested in, they have given us a discount code for our viewers. It's HAMMERBW10, and it'll work on the Cyelee Bear that I'm showing or the Wolf X Pro that I previously showed. Overall, oh, and before I forget, lifetime warranty on these. So if something does go wrong with it, they're going to take care of it and help you out. Overall, I'm very pleasantly not surprised necessarily, because when I looked, I kind of expected these to be high quality optics, so I'll turn it the other way around. I'm not disappointed. They are the quality that it appeared to be when I did my research and accepted the offer to review one of these. They do really appear to be good. So if you're looking for a closed emitter optic, don't want to pay a fortune, and looking for one that is actually seems to be very high quality, metal body and everything else, I would give Cyelee a look. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Player, and Rumble. And thank you, Cyelee, for sending this for us to review.